So I've got this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, we're live right now. This is episode number 7. I am absolutely honored. ELAINE HOLT is here. You guys can't imagine my excitement. I got goosebumps. This is the godmother of BMX, and we're going to find out who coined the term BMX. I think it was ELAINE. So let's enjoy this interview with her. I'm so honored to have her here. This is as far back in history as we're going. She knows everything. So let's get this going. This Holly Dunn is watching. Hey Holly. This episode is brought to you by the New Jersey BMX Hall of Fame. September 27th in New Jersey. This year, guys, it's going to be better than it ever has been. We're going to have all-inclusive, right? So we're going to have the hotel, the banquet, everything's going to be there. You don't have to go anywhere. Fly into Newark, drive to the event. It's going to be amazing. All new inductees this year, and we're going to find out who's going to win the Charlie Litsky Lifetime Achievement Award. She's friends with Charlie. All right, anyway, so let's get this started. Hey, John Johnson, I'd like to thank you for putting this together. Without Johnny Johnson, we wouldn't be here today. Look, it's ELAINE. This is going to be amazing. All right, guys, here we go. ELAINE, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
No, I'm honored to have you. So we usually start out the show with, can you remember your first bike? But I wanted to ask you, I want to ask you, can you recall, and this is very historic, when can you recall the first BMX bike or kids you saw riding? Can you take us back? It's over 50 years, and that's awesome. So.
Yeah, it obviously it's been a very long time, but I had a family member who worked in a bike shop, and he was looking at. He had observed what was going on in the back roads of Orange County, and he wanted to make, and obviously the introduction of the Stingray bike, which changed everything in bicycling. I mean, you can't deny that it just absolutely accelerated bicycling to a very, very significant degree and made it even more relevant than it always has been, because it became not just a means of transportation, but a source of fun for kids.
So do you remember what they were mimicking motorcycles at the time?
Mm-hmm. And so so what my friend had asked me to do was go out and take some photographs and make some notes about what the kids are doing, you know, at the racetracks, you know, or the just
at the motocross tracks.
At the motocross tracks.
Amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah. And so I did, and the first thing that I recognized was, I mean, obviously these were just kids just playing it. I mean, but in a very organized way.
Okay.
You know, they had built. So this is very, very early on. You know, this is just like a bunch of kids that are that have carved out, you know, paths in a dirt field, and they've made all these little.
Can you recall the year? Would this have been 72? Around 72?
Yeah, I think actually, when I observed it, it would have been late 72, early 73. But I didn't do everything. I mean, I didn't graduate into developing the newspaper, obviously until 1974. But I think initially, I was just really taken by the creativity that these little boys, and at that time there really weren't very many girls. It was mostly little boys, and I was in my mid-20s, so I was pretty young, and I just, you know, was intrigued with what they were doing, and so when I went out and started taking photographs of these kids, and that's what I did. I just went out and I would follow them around the track and start taking photographs, and of course, you know, if you have an adult and they're taking photographs of you, it's just gonna kind of bring another element of I'm not just out here, but somebody actually is watching me, and look what I can do.
Yeah.
You know, and so so that was really how it started in my heart.
Right.
Was and then after that, even though things changed with my friend, and you know, he didn't end up doing a whole lot more, or it didn't go very far what he was doing, but it was mostly kids that were imitating motocross, motorcycle motocross, you know, steeplechase riding, and that was kind of the format and the trajectory that the sport took. It was kids who, you know, knew about motorcycle motocross, and they were imitating, you know.
And the name BMX did not even exist yet. I remember my first bike had the fenders and a big fat seat that said MX and big wide handlebars, because there were no BMX bikes then.
No,
so
no.
we tried to make it look like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Do you remember the location that this was going on?
Yeah, you know,
somewhere in Orange County?
It was definitely in Orange County. It might have been Lion Country Safari, you know, Lion Country. I remember, you know, I would have to look it up.
Now, was there someone there that day that went on to become a prominent racer?
You know, I don't remember, because I was visiting the tracks and just taking notes and taking pictures, and I really didn't know the kids then. I didn't, you know, it hadn't really, it was through as I got to meet some of the adults that were involved, like Rick Toomey and people like that. I think Mike Devitt.
Wow.
You know, I mean, Mike was a good friend of mine, and I mean, we became friends, and then yeah. So I think I could say that at the very beginning, it was very much a grassroots thing, and I kept showing up because of the kids.
Wow.
Because they expected me to be there. You know, once you show up and then you show up the next week and you keep showing up, then, you know, then the kids start coming up to you, or they start doing things in front of you because they want that attention. And so really, I guess I showed up because of the kids.
And you're seeing the birth. This is like someone photographing the first basketball game ever, right? You're literally photographing a sport that is brand new, no one even knows about, in its infancy, and that's incredible. Can you imagine the person that first photographed basketball or football? Well, that's you for BMX, so that is amazing.
You know, and I didn't know it at the time. Obviously, but it evolved so quickly, because it was like everything converged all at once. I mean, the timing was just all the pieces were coming together, and all the early people like Ernie Alexander and the people that were carving out the racetracks and making the rules. Obviously, most of these people were motorcycle people, and I took my clues from in the development of my publication from the motorcycle, motorcycle magazine, and so everybody was kind of on that track, because that's what the kids were trying to imitate. But what I saw at the time, as time went on, what I saw was this is a sport or this is an activity that any kid can participate in. And obviously, I don't think we would even have bicycle motocross if it wasn't for the introduction of the Stingray bike.
Yeah.
You know, because that changed the whole trajectory of what you can do on a bike. Because now, you know, you're not just riding in the street, and just so many, the flexibility that it provided, the ability to, you know, go off the road and really imitate what motorcyclists are doing.
I like how you call it an activity, because at this point it wasn't even a sport
No,
yet.
it was an activity. It was just
so amazing.
Yeah,
So amazing.
it was an activity, and it didn't really become a sport. I mean, I brought this first issue.
I brought it too, guys, and I got it autographed by ELAINE.
I brought this with me. Obviously, this goes back 50 years, and there are a couple of little key things as I was looking through this last night. I had never published anything in my life, and so when I look at this, and I look, to some people it might look kind of corny, because it was before computers,
Before the internet, kids.
before the internet. And so when we started publishing, when we published this very, very first issue, we wrote the stories on IBM Selectric typewriters. So everything was typed, and I had a secretary, a young man named Bondo, and he could type 110 words a minute.
Wow, he was your guy.
He was my guy, and actually, he couldn't speak at the time. He was actually mute. But he was so smart, and but anyway, so I don't want anybody to think that I did this all by myself. I just pull the pieces together.
Yeah, you create a great team.
Yeah, I think really that's, if I have a gift, that's probably my gift, is that I can see, I like to think that I can see the gold nuggets in people, and I can see their creativity and what their potential is.
Which brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, and I don't want to get there just yet, but you created superstars in BMX because you saw David Clinton, and you saw Dennis, and you saw all these people, and you were like, oh, they have something, and you created superstars, and those were my superheroes. I say this all the time. I didn't read comic books, I read publications of BMX, and those were my superheroes.
Yeah.
And the uniforms, and the Batmobile was their bike. So you see these golden nuggets in people. I want to get to who you thought was the first ever superstar, but we got to go back because there's still so much to cover.
Okay.
So as you're seeing these riders every week after week after week, are they going to an organized race yet? Or, oh, look at that, there it is, Lunch with the Legends. Thank you.
I have some hot sauce.
There's your cutlery. So is there how do you hook up with organized racing at this point? Does Ernie come to you, or?
No, I would say, I don't know that I ever had a lot of conversation with Ernie. Ernie is kind of a guy's guy, and as a lot of you have to remember that many times I was the only woman out in the field. There weren't any women out there. I mean, other than wives and girlfriends, and mostly girlfriends. And I mean, Suzanne was there, because she was with Ernie. But I was a woman in a man's field, and so that felt a little uncomfortable for me at times, because I wasn't a guy. I was definitely a woman, and even more than that, I have a very strong mom instinct. I had 2 children at the time, and so I was very protective, and I think many of my gut instincts are that way. you know, I love the joy and the creativity that children, and I say children, and you know, little boys may cringe because they don't want to be thought of as children, but many of them were. I mean, some of them were just,
Yeah.
you know, Mark Rink was just a little kid.
Shout out to Mark Rink. That's my boy. I love him. We talk almost daily.
And, yeah, and you know, and Mark, Nancy, I would say people like the people that the other adults that came around, and I'm going to say really, okay, so Ernie and there were other people that got involved later, but I would say Ernie and Scott were definitely pioneers, because Scott already had bums in Long Beach. He had that going on, but there wasn't. You know, they had their little circle. It was a, you know, small little circle of friends and people that they were connecting with, and I think I like to think that what I did through establishing a means of communication was to bring all those elements together.
Amazing.
And you know, as I was looking at this last night, you know,
and by the way, guys,
it's been a while.
They're going to come out with another set of these. If you don't own them, get a hold of me. You can text me or email me at bmxlegendsforever@yahoo.com. And I've been told through the sources that there are going to be more of these printed. You have to get them. There's 4 volumes. It's all of Elaine's work from June of '74 onward. And I own them. It's amazing. It's the best money I've ever spent. There you go. That's my little commercial for you.
Well, and I tell you, I talked to, I think there have been 3 people that have really been instrumental in my coming out of the woodwork, literally, you know, and back onto the BMX scene, because when I left the BMX scene, I was gone for almost 32, 33 years. And it was Cash Matthews that Cash Matthews and Tom Hand. They never gave up on looking for me. I didn't even know they were looking for me. I didn't even know.
You're a national treasure, Elaine.
I did, you know, I got a phone call from Cash Matthews back then, in I think like 2006 or 2007. And he, I just got this phone call out of the blue, and it was like, is this ELAINE HOLT? And of course I was ELAINE Osmond by then, and I thought, ELAINE HOLT, I haven't been ELAINE HOLT for a long time. Who is this calling me? And then he said, well, you know, you may not remember me, but you're kind of a rock star in my world. And I thought, okay. Anyway, but then everything started flowing back together, and that's how I actually got back involved. And it's been such a blessing to me. And so you're asking.
Yeah, I want to know the how these kids you were going. You were photographing them weekly in the field. How it became to where you're now seeing organized races.
Okay, well, that was. I really think that this very first issue, and Cash Matthews has said this to me. He said the most important issue that you ever published was this one.
Complimentary it was also. You didn't even charge for it.
No, because
Very nice.
I wanted everybody to have it because I saw this as I started to get to know, you know, some of the families and some of the kids involved, people like Nancy Rink and I got to know, you know, Steve and Peddler's West, Jim Emerson, and people that were actually coming around the kids and embracing the activity, being involved as good parents, and I just, you know, I just thought, wow, that is just. So they were really kind of the building blocks for me. You know, I saw people like Scott, and, you know, Scott was more kind of involved, like with Mike Devitt, And so he was kind of what I saw the father figure in Scott's life, his mentor. And Scott was a very dynamic, interesting young man. And you know, I mean, he would talk to me, and it was like, you know, I mean, this is a really exceptional young man, and he's got a purpose, he's driven, he's doing things that most young people are not doing. He's trying to organize the kids. He had natural leadership capabilities, and so that was beautiful. But the important thing was, for me, is that we started to connect the dots, and I think really without bicycle motocross and without all the work that we put into trying to make sure that we add all the pieces and make it as interesting as we can for the kids, so that it could be a legitimate sport that could grow, and that it could be replicated anywhere. And that was my goal, was to, I saw this as something that young people, young boys could participate in. You know, kids that maybe they weren't involved in school sports, you know, but they still needed, you know, something physical, something where they could excel and be a part of. And so what I think what we contributed is bicycle motocross brought the elements together, and then we talked about them in the publication, and we tried to cover all the elements involved. You know, how to build a track. You know, what about liability? You know, can we do this with the Parks and Rec? You know, what constitutes a good bike? You know, what do the kids want? You know, what are the challenges in putting together a bike? How can the kids stay safe? You know, because that was important to me right from the very beginning. Because we did not want the kids going out there without helmets, without gear, and so we really wanted them to be fully suited up. And so all these things started to evolve, and when you think about the fact that once we put out that first issue, we continued to put out an issue every single month.
Nice.
And so there was a lot of pressure, and like I say, a lot of energy, a lot of work went into it. Things that, you know, that the kids didn't think about, like, you know, the logistics of you know, writing stories, no computers. We received stories on long strips of paper, you know, that typesetters typed from pages that were typed on a typewriter, and then we had you know, drawing boards, and then we put those pieces together. And so it took a team of people to do that. It was a tremendous amount of work to put this publication together, and we were always under deadline. And so we didn't get everything perfect all the time, and finding talent was always a challenge, but I really feel like even back then that God was with me, because He brought the right people into my sphere of influence that allowed me to put together teams. And yes, they did roll over, because we were constantly trying to improve this. That's why you see, you know, over the years we changed the masthead. We were always striving to make it better. How can we make it better? How can we make it more appealing? You know, how can we, you know, continue to grow the sport? And even though toward the end, I mean, we never achieved like huge numbers, you know, but there was a factor that a lot of people don't think about. You know, you buy a magazine now, and most people will not keep it. I mean, they might keep it for a couple months and then they throw it away.
Yeah.
You know, but my publication, I know people that still have the original copies.
Amazing.
You know, 50 years later. You can't say that about hardly any magazine.
Yeah, I was a magazine. That's all I had. I grew up in New Jersey. I would go to Shatzo's store, and I saw Dennis was on the cover, the first one I ever got, and I was like, oh my god! And my mom would put it in the window when I came home from school. I came down the hill. I'd see it was in the window. I go, it's here. But like you say, it was every month. We had 30 days, and I used to go through that thing. I used to memorize it, and then wait for the next one. So
yeah. And you know, since you mentioned Dennis again, I want to mention this, that Dennis was very instrumental in helping me. I mean, he has been a wonderful friend to me. And Dennis has told me, because I talked to him just recently, he told me, he said that people can contact him through his Facebook page.
Okay.
And so if you want to buy these,
they're amazing,
also,
guys. Please
yeah,
buy them.
yeah. If you want to buy these, another source for you would be Dennis Dane.
Yep.
His Facebook page. He's ready to talk to you about the next.
Yeah. Anybody that gets a hold of me, I'm going to forward it to Dennis anyway. So cut out the middleman, go right to Dennis.
Yeah. So Dennis.
That's where I got mine from. Yeah.
Right. And so it's just really.
And what we're talking about is every issue that ELAINE ever made for Bicycle Motocross News is now done and reprinted in these beautiful volumes, and it's amazing. I look at it almost nightly when I go to bed, and it's all the history from day one. So if you're a historian like me and a super freak, definitely get a hold of these, get a hold of Dennis, and get yourself one of these. So many questions for you, and I've been up all night thinking of them. So when things start to come together, and you see these guys and you're photographing these kids, I keep going back because that's the genesis, right? What are you calling it? When does it become bicycle motocross?
Well, obviously I came up with the title right away, Bicycle Motocross News.
How did you?
But then we just shortened it to BMX News, and so I mean it was just something that was very.
Because in the beginning I don't think it was truly BMX. It was called something like B-Cross or something.
Well, you know,
Can you remember
some
the first?
people called it Cyclocross.
Okay.
You know, and that was a name that was kind of, we kind of threw that around.
Which is crazy,
Cyclocross News. I mean, it could have been Cyclocross News, but
meanwhile in Europe there's actually a sport called it.
Yeah. So no, we coined the term BMX News.
Can you remember? Because I'm a little crazy, Elaine. Can you remember that when that happened? Were you at a lunch? Were you at?
No.
Yeah,
I hardly ever had time for lunch back then. In those days, I was working so hard. Because the other element, I mean, there was a business element to putting this together.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to set up a distribution of it, so you had to have dealers, subscribers, you have, and you still, and I had an office in Orange and Tustin, and
so amazing.
And so I had overhead, I had employees, and I needed advertisers, and because the advertisers are the ones that pay the bill. You know, the dealers just, they barely just cover the cost of maybe, just shipping. So there were business aspects, and there was really, in terms of pulling all the pieces together, the direction that we were taking it, the business aspects of it, I was it,
Do you remember your first advertiser? We can look it up.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I would probably say the person that was most influential in keeping me afloat, and I really think this person has not been recognized as widely as he deserves, and that is Tom Seifert from Matthews Motocross.
Okay.
Without Tom, I will tell you this, without Tom Seifert, I would not have been able to continue to publish. So I'm just saying, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. If anybody thinks I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, I would say Tom deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, because I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. Not only did he buy the most expensive cover of my magazine, he always bought the back cover. He always bought the back cover. But he was significant even early on, and may I say, if I can, there's something in here I want to share with you. I had some amazing people that helped me early on, that I mean, became legends in themselves.
And you got to see, because of BMX News, you got to see, now people are advertising their bicycles, and you were saying, well, wait a minute, there was Stingrays in the park, and now I'm seeing legitimate BMX bikes with Matthews and things like that. Which is
and he
you got to see that as well.
Yeah, he was one of the early people that really put his money where his mouth was in terms of BMX. His company made a significant contribution to the sport, because of the team that he sponsored, because of the high quality innovation that he put into his product, and I can't even find it in here now. I saw it last night. There were so many delightful things that I found in here last night.
I find them delightful on a daily.
I'm not kidding you. I just thought this was so funny. Okay, so I just want to plug this while we're talking about Tom. Bob Osborne worked for us.
I understand.
And he was an amazing photographer and a very gifted individual. And
let me interject real quick, Elaine, if you
sure.
don't mind. Guys,
go ahead.
Bob Osborne, okay, listen. So everybody knows BMX Action Magazine. It's the reason I moved to California from New Jersey. But Bob got his start with ELAINE. Can we stop for a second and comprehend this? Bob and Wendy also got their start with ELAINE. So this monumentous BMX Action Magazine that we all waited for every month, and this portrayal of California as the promised land, that was Bob. But Bob was hired by ELAINE.
Right.
This is incredible.
Yeah. So Bob did. As I mentioned earlier, it was the people that I met out on the track. And I got to know the adults that were actually, coming together, and they were out there. Bob had kids, and so he was out there with RL, his son, and Wendy, his daughter, who was also a very gifted photographer. Amazing kids. Bob was an amazing photographer, and so actually Bob did our technical form, and so I would give bicycles to Bob, and I would say, okay, I'm going to get the manufacturers to send me their bikes, and you're going to take them apart, and you're going to test them. And one of the first bikes that he tested was the Matthews motocross bike. And in this one article that I was just seeing in here, and I don't know which edition it was, but it was the first year, he says in the very end, he says, and I tip my bicycle, my BMX hat to Matthews Motocross and that particular bike that they had built for. And I thought, So he was, it's like I say, I didn't do this by myself. I couldn't have done it by myself. There's a lot of things I did do by myself in the beginning, like the writing, a lot of the photography I did in the first issues, until I could find and vet, people out in the field that I met, that I connected with. And they came from a lot of different disciplines. Some of them were not even BMX, but yet they made a contribution. I met a young woman who made quilts, and she was a quilter, and she was an awesome young lady. And I, as time went on, I became really stretched in terms of my ability to accomplish everything that needed to be done and come out on time. And so I said, okay, I know that you know how to put together quilts, so that tells me that you're a creative person, you know how to put pieces together. I need your help doing my layups.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she came in and she helped me out. So I had terrific people, and I will tell you that the one common denominator that we had at our office at BMX News, everybody loved to come to work.
Yeah.
Everybody was excited about what we were doing, and we had fun. It was really fun. And so we wanted to cover every aspect of the sport of bicycle motocross. We even did articles that were, I think, called The Human Machine.
I remember them, yeah.
Yeah, to show kids, you know, what you need to do to take care of your body, to be safe, to have energy, to conserve your strength. And so, I mean, there wasn't any, we had hints and helps, and at the same time, we wanted to honor every single young person that came to us. If they sent us, they went to the trouble of drawing a bicycle, we wanted to publish it. You know, we were all about kids.
Amazing.
And so...
What I love is, so I founded the New Jersey BMX Hall of Fame. So as I'm looking through your publication, I'm finding the first ever printed things on New Jersey, right? So this is where you would find it. Where would be the first printed article ever on the sport in New Jersey? And it was because you had people writing in. So I'm reprinting those out and I'm putting them up online and showing people that anything connected to you was the first. Arizona, where's the first Arizona ever piece written about that state? Well, it was in here.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to go back that your work was the work from the very beginning. So I'm able to reference through and go, wow, it helps me with the Hall of Fame because Charlie Litsky, as you know, was huge for our state. And you had him doing things for you. And I love that you had all the different tracks would give you a schedule and you put it up there, and I love going through and seeing this track and this track, and all these are the very first tracks ever. Do you remember what your first official race was that you covered for BMX News? It's going to be in here,
yeah,
but I wanted to discuss it a little bit.
You know, it's I'm sure it's in here.
It
I would say the first really significant race that had what we would call big time backing would have either been the Yamaha Gold Cup, possibly, or let's see, probably the Yamaha Gold Cup, I'm thinking.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, you'd have to go through back and look at what was there. I will tell you, the other thing, and this was part of the fun of what we were doing, was coming up with the names for the kids. We're the ones that came up with the monikers for Stomp and Stew, you know, Red Baron, the Red Baron. I mean, and it's so surprising to me that 50 years later, that's still how people know them.
You still Stomp and Stew to me. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It is amazing. And you know what? What is so delightful to me, and it just thrills me when I run across this, I am so grateful to Cash Matthews and all those people that brought me back, because they came into my life at a time when maybe I was a little frustrated in some aspects of, you know, maybe I didn't feel like I was being as productive as I wanted to be, and it just reopened this world to me, and the impact that I never realized the impact that I was having on those boys. I never realized that, you know, when we did the reunion with was it last year or year before last? Tony Alexander.
Yeah, I think it was last year.
It was last year? Yeah. Forgive me if I'm a little forgetful.
No, you've told us so much. I'm very impressed.
But I will tell you, while I was there, this really touched me. And I really, really Honestly, it's been such a reward for me. I heard Dave Clinton, who was an amazing young man,
First superstar, I
amazing,
believe. Yep.
amazing rider. And as I was up there talking, you know, when they gave me a little space to talk, and I heard him say under his breath, "You changed my life."
Wow.
And I'm not kidding you. Those words were like, wow.
Well, think about the thousands of lives you've changed, because if you're photographing those kids and you want to create something that will go nationally, that inspired all of us.
Well, I utterly respected them.
Yeah.
I respected them, and I treated them with respect, and that's something that young people don't always have the privilege of getting.
Yeah.
And so you know, if you're the big football player on, you know, your high school team, you know, you're going to get a lot of accolades and things, but not everybody's going to, you know, they're not going to play football. They're not going to do team sports. And so and this was my vision right from the very beginning, that this was going to fill a gap in young men's lives, young boys' lives. And I don't mean to say that in a sexist way, because there were girls that did come in. There were a few brave girls that came in that were awesome, and I always rally for the girls. And but it was predominantly young boys, and what they did, and their creativity, and you know, I gave them a legitimate platform, and I said, "You're important. What you do matters, and I'm going to help you do what you love doing, and you are the star.
Yeah.
You are the star here." And then, you know, the adults are thinking, okay, well, you know, how can I get involved in this? How can I support? So we created an industry, and this is the thing that has blown me away, is that we actually created a multi-million-dollar industry. And I was, this is a story I like to tell, but about 2 years ago, I walked into Dick's Sporting Goods, and I was trying to buy a cooler for my car, because I was going to take a road trip, and I was looking for a new little cooler. I didn't want something big, but I wanted something good. And so the guy at the store, he showed me all these different coolers that he had, you know, and then he said, but we have something new. He said, and this is the top of the line that we have in the store, and it's called the BMXer. And I thought, whoa.
Amazing.
And I mean, if you look at the sports drinks, they have bicycle motocross riders, you know, the Monster and all those, you know. So we created an identity for an industry that you know,
didn't exist.
It didn't exist before.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, as you're making newspaper, who do you feel? I know what my choice is, but who do you see as the first ambassador, as a rider of BMX? Because I think I know, but go ahead. It's all you. It's your show.
Well, you know what? I have to say that Scott did more for the sport at a grassroots level than anybody else. As far as the riders go, I would say it was Scott. Now, at that time, you know, stingrays were all over. But at that time, I only had the California perspective in the very beginning. And I know now, and this is still true, that as California goes, so goes the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I say the rest of the world because as we influence, and that's why we carry a very, very significant responsibility in this state. And I say it's a responsibility because I don't know if it's because of the weather. You know, we have better weather all year round.
That's why I moved here.
We have better weather all year round. It's a beautiful state, and and bicycle motocross is somewhat weather driven. So, you know, when you have snow or you have rain or tornadoes or whatever, you can't, you know, you can only read BMX news. You can't actually do it. And so, you know, it keeps you warm and fuzzy during the winter months.
Absolutely.
But you know, and it keeps you in your garage planning what you're going to do when the warm weather comes. But in California, it was more of a year-round thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
and multiple times during the week.
Exactly. So, so yeah, I just am so happy that we did what we did, not knowing what we were doing, because by not knowing what we were doing, yes, we had influence from the motorcycle trade, but I also recognized that these kids were young, and they were too young for motorcycles, many of them. I mean, I had kids 6, 7, 8 years old. You know, I didn't want to disinclude them. I wanted them to be part of it. And then they, you know, started looking up to the heroes and the bigger boys, and they you know, the bigger boys set the bar for them. And so, yeah, I was all about inclusivity and security, safety, and fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we were all about.
My mom said, I said I want to race motorcycles, and my mom said it's too dangerous. And I said, well, what if we take out the engine and I do it on a bicycle? She goes, well, I can get into that. So that's how I was able to convince my parents that I was able to race.
Yeah,
so
that is so awesome. So how old were you when you started
12.
racing? 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
It took a while to get back. That was 79. So it took a while to get back, which is my next question is, how did you feel when you started to see all these different states coming back and telling you their schedules? And I mean, because you started it here in a dirt lot, but now you're seeing Florida's sending you their schedules or their...
Well, you know, we were looking for points of distribution. I mean, you know, you have to realize that all of the pieces have to come together all at once. Mm-hmm. And so when we put out that complimentary issue, we were just kind of focusing mostly on what we knew that was happening here in Southern California. And so then I had to do research on, okay, so we want this to go out. We know that this is out there. And so we need to connect with bicycle dealers. And so that was probably my first thrust, was connecting with bike dealers all over the country. So that...
Smart thinking, by the way. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we had to. I mean, because they were going to be our main source of distribution. And yeah, we had subscribers, and we had subscribers all over the world. And I got letters from kids in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa,
so it's going
Latin
on.
America.
I've always talked about this. It's going on in different pockets of the country.
Yeah.
But there's no internet, there's nothing, there's handwritten letters. So you're putting out a newsletter not knowing that there's pockets going on, and then once they get a copy of you, now they're connected to the world.
Right.
And now they can say, okay.
So then we had, you know, the letters to the editor, and to my knowledge, we never ignored anybody. If they sent us a letter, we tried to answer it. Obviously, we probably couldn't answer every single letter because, you know, of space that we had. So setting up a dealership network was really important, and obviously the first people that came on board we recognized that we couldn't do this for free.
Yeah.
You know, we needed to make money. I mean, this became my source of income.
So amazing.
You know, and I had 2 kids to raise. So you know, I mean, it had to take care of me and my family, and it also supported other people that were staff. Now, we had a lot of people that were willing to volunteer, and we loved them. but they recognized that they were making an investment in their children, in their communities, and so therefore they willingly participated in the process and the growth, and everybody just thought it was fun.
Yeah.
You know, we all loved it.
Yeah, like the Ring family and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, they dedicated hours
Yeah.
to, you know, and Nancy came alongside and she volunteered, and she was willing to do this and that and the other, and, you know, thank God for volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you, how are your thoughts on the development of the bike? Because you saw the Stingrays, now you have advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, wow, look at the Matthews bike, look at the Rink Raider, look at all these different bikes, the DGs, and Scott has SEs. Were you blown away on, like, how does it go from these kids in the lot on these Stingrays to now when you have these pretty high-tech bicycles? Did it blow you away when you saw the tech?
Oh, I mean, it was like before that, there was not a venue or a means of communicating, you know, product. There wasn't a way of selling a product. It was all kind of word of mouth, or it was very localized.
Yeah.
You know, this bike dealer, you know, he's made this fork now, or this wheel, or whatever. But when we got Shimano involved, when we got Carlisle Tire and all these people advertised in my publication, you know, and when we got Schwinn, and Schwinn was, you know, I mean, Schwinn flew me to Chicago and a couple of times, and I met with the people there, and I was surprised. They had my publication, you know, in a glass case in Chicago, and
you were the only publication
and I was the
at that
only,
time.
yeah, there wasn't anybody else.
Amazing.
There was nobody else.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
You've done so much, you have no idea. That is amazing.
How you doing?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Overheard your conversation a little bit. You talking about North New Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from East Orange. You know?
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have some relatives up there.
Right next to North. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm from the shore.
Yeah. Well, you lived down there with all those rich people.
No. I'm middle. Trust me, my dad was a hardworking dude.
Yeah. I used to be a garbage man in North New Jersey.
Oh, that's tough work.
In between college. Now they call them sanitary engineers.
Yeah, they do. Have a great day.
Good for you. We would be lost without you.
Lunch with the legends. Anything can happen. So,
anyway, okay.
Yeah, so technically, like, you're seeing the BMX bike in its infancy all the way, the Moto Mags and my
yeah, well, so we set this fire, this little flame of, okay, so now you have a platform for whatever it is you're making. And then, you know, and then we and obviously we had to pay for, you know, publishing paper. I mean, it wasn't inexpensive, and even though I did, you know, I had a wonderful printer. It was a printer that printed newspapers and Riverside County Publishing, and the only time that they could put my publication on their machines was sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning.
I was going to say late night,
2 or 3 in the morning, so I had to be there at 2 or 3 in the morning when those first papers came out to make sure that everything was right. And one time I discovered that one of our layout people had put a story. They didn't lay it out properly. They were so interested in the creative aspect that the story, because the story was put together in strips of paper that were, you know, all lined up on a sheet, and the story was misaligned, and they put the middle of the story toward the front and the front of the story toward the middle, And so I would have to read every story and every line to make sure that everything was in there. I mean, it was a huge amount of
Proofreading,
work.
right?
Yeah, proofreading. There you
My
go.
dad was a printer, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, so you know.
Oh yeah, I know for sure. All right, so we'll probably have to wrap this up. I want to do a part 2. We'll talk about that later. I could go on all day with Elaine, but we need to eat, I guess, you know. Jesus, I don't even know how to wrap this up. The things you've done for the sport are profound. The things, without you, we all wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have, you created great jobs for me, like the things that I do with the Hall of Fame and all my websites and all that. So I want to thank you on behalf of everyone around the world that is a BMXer. And why are they a BMXer? Because you coined the name, that's why. Thank you for your contributions. You're one of a kind. You're a national treasure. I could go on and on forever, but thank you from the bottom of my heart, Elaine. You are an amazing human being.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all you've
And
done.
thanks
And on
for
behalf of all
inviting me.
the listeners and everybody else, guys, this is as good as it gets. So thank you, Elaine. You're an icon. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much. Gonna wrap this up and finally eat because we were talking so much. Thanks for watching episode 7. This will go up on YouTube. You can go over to YouTube, BMX Legends Society, Lunch with the Legends. It'll be over there. And thank you so much. Thank you, Elaine. And guys, go ride a bike and ride a BMX bike. Why? Because she named it that way. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.